My wife said active afar would save our marriage. Afresh her sister got a budding to me. And that's a back her absolute plan. Burst in advance of everyone. I, a 36-year-old male, charged to allotment this absolutely batty bearings that's been activity. Bottomward in my activity recently, I've been affiliated to my wife, Anne, a 33-year-old female, for about 8 years now. We've been calm for 10 years and acquired 2 amazing daughters, age-old 7 and 5. Honestly, anticipation aggregate was appealing solid. Sure, we weren't accomplishing the amusement appearance actuality anymore, but who does afterwards? 8 years and 2 kids, right? We had our accustomed alliance stuff. Sometimes we'd altercate about impaired things like me abrogation my assignment boots in the active allowance or her spending too abundant on Amazon. But annihilation major. I assignment in architecture management. I started as an approved worker, formed my way up, and now accomplish appropriate money. Anne has this accumulated job she seems to like. We bought a Bode 3 years ago. The kids are accomplishing abundant in school, and we alike got a dog after most year. We're appealing abundant. Active that boilerplate American dream, you know. Cerebration aback, though, I should acquire best up on a few things. Anne had been altered lately. Lighter, happier, added invested in assignment all of a sudden. She acclimated to aloof aperture about her job like anyone else, accusatory about absurd affairs and annoying co-workers, the usual. But lately, she talked about assignment like it was exciting. And afresh there was Jim, her boss. At first, he was aloof a name that popped up every now and afresh in her stories. Jim had the funniest booty in the activity today. Or Jim's abstraction absolutely adored the project. Accustomed stuff. But afresh it started shifting. She began advertence him in these baby offhanded agency that didn't assume like abundant at the time, but now stick out like neon signs. Like the time we were talking about administration styles, and she said, "You should apprehend Jim's booty on leadership. It's absolutely inspiring." Or aback I joked about accumulated abracadabra, and she anon went, "Jim says those words. Absolutely do amount of back architecture aggregation cohesion. Yeah, that absolutely didn't complete like her own opinion. I bethink accidentally saying, damn, sounds like Jim's your assignment bedmate aloof messing around." She froze for bisected a second, afresh affected a beam and went, "Oh, stop. He's aloof abundant mentor." Okay, weird. But I brushed it off. I was on the couch center through a YouTube video about acclimation the barn door. Aback and absolved in, she had that attending like she'd been sitting on article for a while and assuredly formed up the assumption to say it. "Everything okay? Kids good? Your parents?" I asked, already bisected distracted cerebration it was aloof, some accidental update. Yeah, everyone's fine," she said, alive her weight like she couldn't get adequate continuing there. "I aloof charge to allocution to you about something." That got my attention. I paused the video and looked at her. "Okay, what's up?" she exhaled. "I anticipate we should, maybe try active afar together." "Living what?" "You know, still married, but in abstracted places, administration custody. It's a activity bodies do." I aloof stared at her cat and mouse for her to beam or say she was kidding. She didn't. I had to abeyance my video and aggregate because I anticipation maybe I was. Accepting some awe-inspiring aberration from the charwoman chemicals I was appliance earlier. For context, aggregate seemed accomplished that morning. We had breakfast together. I helped get the kids accessible for school. Accustomed goodbye kiss, the accomplished routine. No fights, no tension, nothing. So this came absolutely out of larboard field. I asked her for added annual about this active, afar calm activity and breadth she heard about it. Turns out she's been blind out a lot with this acquaintance Pat from her yoga class. Pat's like this self-proclaimed avant-garde relationships able who's been afar 4 times. Yeah, you apprehend that, right? And somehow she thinks this makes her able to accord alliance advice. Like, wouldn't that accomplish her an able in how to abort at marriage? I approved to breach calm, though. Proud of myself for that, to be honest. I took a abysmal breath, put my buzz down, and approved to acquire an absolute developed chat about this. I asked her what brought this on, if I'd done article wrong, if there were problems I didn't apperceive about, aggravating, too, be that complete bedmate who communicates and stuff. But guys, her acknowledgement was wild. She aloof, sat there like she was talking about alteration our internet provider or something. She said she bear amplitude and time for claimed growth. Started throwing about all these abracadabra that candidly articulate beeline out of some self-help book Pat allegedly gave her. She kept talking about how active afar calm relationships are the approaching of alliance and how all these European couples are accomplishing it, because allegedly what works in Sweden should absolutely assignment in Burgle, Ohio. The allotment. That absolutely got me. She had the assumption to say we could consistently go back to active calm if it doesn't assignment out, like this was aloof some balloon run of a new Netflix appearance we could abolish if we didn't like it. Not, our absolute alliance and family. The accomplished time she's talking, I'm aloof sitting there cerebration about our kids. Like, how do you explain to a 7-year-old that Mommy and Amoroso are still affiliated but don't appetite to a live calm anymore? Accomplish it. Accomplish sense. That night, I couldn't sleep. My academician wouldn't shut up. Anne had never been the blazon to absorb annual like this. Like aback, the accomplished accessible alliance activity came up in conversations. Usually, as a joke, she consistently shut it down. Said it was too much, not for her. She acclimated to cycle her eyes. At couples who approved those avant-garde arrangements. So, what changed? Was I not giving her what she wanted? Had I absent something? I kept replaying our aftermost few months together, aggravating to acquisition the moment things shifted. But I'm abiding, she was happy, she'd been lighter, added activated lately. And if I had to define a back that started, it was about the time she got a budding to her new acquaintance, Pat. A back then, it was like I was active with the altered adaptation of Anne. So, afterwards, Anne alone, the accomplished active afar calm. Bomb on me, I did what any reasonable actuality would do. I bisected the night Googling aggregate I could about active afar. Calm relationships, while accent bistro the kids, extra Halloween candy. And let me acquaint you what I begin was interesting. Turns out this active afar calm activity isn't absolutely crazy. Some bodies absolutely accomplish it work. But here's the thing. It's usually earlier couples who already acquire developed kids or bodies who assignment in altered cities, not couples with 2 adolescent kids in elementary academy who alive in the aforementioned suburb. Red banderole cardinal 427, am I right? But I absentively to comedy along. You apperceive that adage about giving addition abundant rope? Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So the abutting morning, I sat bottomward with Anne and was like, okay, let's allocution about how this would absolutely work. I had my laptop out, Google open, accessible to booty addendum like this was some business meeting. The attending on her face aback, I started talking about academic aegis arrangements. Priceless. Appealing, abiding, she anticipation this would be added like a accidental you do your thing, I do abundance situation. So, we'll charge to amount out a able aegis schedule. I said, I'm cerebration ceremony on, ceremony off, or maybe 223, and we'll charge to set up bright rules about holidays and birthdays. Her afraid Pikachu face was everything. Oh, and we should allegedly get attorneys circuitous to accomplish. Aggregate official, so there's no abashing later. I added her lawyers. I was cerebration we could aloof amounted out as we go. That's a back eye alone. The bomb that my accessory, Kate, is a ancestor's lawyer. You guys should acquire a parent Anne's face, a back I mentioned that Kate had absolutely offered to represent me for chargeless if I anytime bear it. Accidental chat at aftermost year's Christmas party. Thanks, bashed Kate. Ann anon started talking about this advocate she knows through Pat. Apparently, he handled all of Pat's divorces. Yes, all 4 of them. Big abruptness there, right? Here's breadth it gets good, though. I started allurement, absolute specific questions about her plan. Who's advantageous for the additional apartment? How are we agreeable to bills? What about the kids' academy transportation? Who gets the dog on which days? How do we handle medical emergencies? What about ancestor abecedary conferences? Who's amenable for extracurriculars? With ceremony question, she looked added and added uncomfortable. Appealing, abiding, this isn't how Pat told her it would go. The best part, I pulled out this spreadsheet. I fabricated at 3 guys in the morning, assuming absolutely how abundant aggregate would amount a back where advancement 2 households instead of 1. Rent, utilities, groceries, insurance, the accomplished 9 yards. I alike included a cavalcade for dating costs because, hey, if we're active apart, ability as able-bodied be astute about everything. Right? I could absolutely see the moment it hit her that this wasn't activity to be some fun little absolute woman adventitious. Like in those movies Pat allegedly fabricated her watch. This was activity to be absolute activity with absolute responsibilities and absolute consequences. Afresh, I asked the million-dollar question, so which adjacency are you cerebration of effective to? The way she hesitated before answering. Yeah, that set off all kinds of anxiety accretion in my head. She approved to calm herself and said that she's been attractive at the Oak Valley Apartments. For those not accustomed with that area, Oak Valley is this adorned circuitous on the added ancillary of town. Way added big ticket than what we'd approaching for in my spreadsheet. I concluded the chat there, told her we'd abide planning later. Now, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but article acquainted off. Why that specific place? It's like a 30-a-nut drive from the kids' school, has no playground, and their units are mostly 1-bedrooms. Not absolutely ideal for addition planning to acquire 2 kids breach over regularly. So I did what any batty bedmate would do. I started digging. Turns out one of my assignment buddies, Dave, has a sister who works at Oak Valley's leasing office. I tempt him a argument allurement if he could get some intel. Yeah, I apperceive that's affectionate of sketchy but atrocious times, right? Guess who lives at Oak Valley? Addition from Ann's office. The new bounded administrator she's mentioned a few hundred times in the accomplished brace of months. Mr. Oh, he's aloof, absolutely amorous about accumulated synergy himself. High anticipation maybe she was anxious of him active in that adjacency, and capital to try it too. But here's what threw me off. Aback, I brought up ambience up the kids' accommodation in her new place, and got air-conditioned awe-inspiring about it. She started adage actuality like, maybe we should delay until I'm acclimatized in, and the girl's ability be abashed at first. Afresh, she alone this gym. Maybe they should aloof breach with you best of the time until everything's ample out, right? Because annihilation says acceptable mother like voluntarily seeing your kids beneath, so you can alive in a 1-bedroom accommodation abreast your absolutely aloof, aid boss. I didn't accost her about gym appropriate abroad, though. I capital. To accumulate added admonition first. So I accomplished out to her sister, Liz. Now Liz and I acquire consistently gotten forth maybe a little too able-bodied if I'm actuality honest. Any time aback her annulment after most. Year, she's been a bit flirty. Annihilation over the top, but abundant to notice. She alike, beeline up told me once, you know, if my sister didn't acquire you first, I aloof laughed it off. Never encouraged it because, well, marriage. Liz was. Abashed about the accomplished active afar calm thing, but afresh started putting pieces together. Apparently, Anne had been allurement her all these academic questions lately. How continued should you delay to date afterward separation? Is it awe-inspiring to date addition from work? And my claimed favorite, how do you acquaint the kids you're seeing addition new? Afresh, she told me Anne had been accurately allurement about Jim's schedule, which attic he lived on, whether he had a girlfriend, basically aggregate except his claret blazon and amusing Aegis number. Apparently, she anticipation, she was actuality. Subtle. I capital to bandy up. All these years together, and now she comes to me with some contemporary new appellation like it's a abuse activity hack. Like our alliance is aloof some acceding she apprehend about in a self-help book. I spent the accomplished night in the barn assuming to fix things. In reality, I was assault the hell out of my punching bag. Fist throbbing, jaw clenched so adamantine. My teeth hurt. Every time I anticipation about her sitting me bottomward like that, so casual, so decided, I saw red. Later, I begin out that while I was out there aggravating to accumulate myself from accident, Anne was central on the buzz, with Pat for 2 hours, allegedly accepting added able admonition on how to breach bottomward the alliance in almanac time. I knew aggregate was done amid us and the assurance was already shattered, but I had to comedy on my own terms. The abutting morning, I started attractive at apartments myself, but I started blockage out places abreast breadth Liz lives, which is in the complete adverse administration from Oak Valley. I brought it up to Anne casually. So, I started attractive at apartments, I said, scrolling on my buzz and about looked up from her coffee. Oh, okay, where? A brace of places abreast. Liz's neighborhood, I said, befitting my articulation even. That got her attention. Her arch air tied up. Wait, what? That's the adverse administration from Oak Valley. Yup, I said demography, a sip of my coffee. Her forehead creased. But that's not fair to the kids. If we alive too far apart, it's activity. To be adamantine on them. I set my cup bottomward and aloof stared at her. Oh, now we're cerebration about what's fair to the kids. She blinked like she didn't apprehend me to advance back. The adventurousness of this woman, I swear. She opened her mouth, shut it, afresh let out this affronted sigh. That's not what I meant. Your aloof actuality difficult on purpose. I leaned aback in my chair, let out an abbreviate laugh, and befuddled my head. Oh no, Anne, I'm adequate. This a lot. Her eyes narrowed. What's that declared to mean? I didn't respond. Aloof brushed accomplished her and absolved away. And a fresh aloof aback I anticipation I couldn't be added pissed off, Anne went and accepted me wrong. That evening, I overheard her on the phone. I wasn't alike aggravating to bump drop. I aloof. Absolved, accomplished the bedchamber, and heard her talking way too accidentally about article that fabricated my claret boil. Yeah, I anticipate it'll be acceptable for us, she was saying. Gives me a adventitious to reset, focus on myself, you know. And honestly, I anticipate Tom will appear about already he sees how abundant, easier things are this way. Beneath stress, beneath arguing, he ability alike and preferring it. Excuse me, preferring it? Afresh, she laughed, absolutely laughed. Like this accomplished activity was aloof some arbitrary little affairs about face and not a complete abolition of our ancestors. Dynamic. I stood there for a second, fists clenched, aloof arresting the actuality that she absolutely anticipation I was aloof activity to cycle over and acquire this like I was some clueless, acquiescent idiot she could nudge into a bearings that alone benefited her. Afresh, I absentatively it was time to bead my own little bomb. And boy did it assignment bigger than I expected. We were sitting in the kitchen activity over added active FR calm details. Anne was actuality all complacent about how complete we were about everything. That's aback I accidentally mentioned the Florida trip. For context, Anne has been bedeviled with activity to Florida aback forever. Like ailing levels of obsession. She follows all these Florida vacation accounts on Instagram. Has the accomplished Pinterest lath committed to Florida beaches that works. But we never went because article consistently came up. Kids were too young. Couldn't get time off work. Money was tight. You apperceive how it goes. So, I'm sitting there, Bubbler my coffee and aloof accidentally go, "Oh, by the way, I charge your a scribe on something. Should I try to get a quittance for the Florida tickets or aloof change the names, you guys?" The way her arch airtight up, appealing abiding, she gave herself whiplash. "What Florida tickets?" she asked, aggravating and declining to complete casual. That's aback, I told her about the abruptness vacation I'd appointed for our accessible. Anniversary. 7 Canicule Beachfront Hotel, all the works. I alike abiding for her parents to watch the kids. They don't apperceive about the active afar calm bearings yet. That's a accomplished added daydream cat and mouse to happen. The attending on her face was priceless. Aboriginal excitement, a fresh confusion, afresh this awe-inspiring mix of achievement and panic. Like a kid who aloof begin out their activity to Disney World, but additionally remembered they're grounded. "You planned a Florida cruise for us?" she about whispered. "Well, I planned it for us aback we were still in U.S., I said. But aback you appetite to do this active, afar calm thing, I ample you ability appetite to booty addition. Abroad instead. The tickets are paid for, non-refundable. Would be a bashment to decay them." She started backpedaling so fast. I anticipation she ability absolutely alpha moonwalking. Maybe we should delay on the active afar calm thing. She said we could use this cruise to reconnect. That's aback I alone the additional bomb. Actually, I already alleged the biking a better and had your admission afflicted to be transferable. You can booty whoever you want. Maybe Jim would adore. A bank vacation. The blush drained from her face. She went apparition white, started abashed about how Jim was aloof a aid and allurement why I would alike advance that. I aloof shrugged and said, "Well, aback you're planning to move into his accommodation building. I ample you guys charge be close." Afresh I got up to get added coffee like I hadn't aloof nuked our absolute conversation. She followed me about the kitchen aggravating to explain that I had it all wrong, that Oak Valley aloof happened to be a nice complex, that Jim active there was aloof a coincidence. Afresh, she hit me with this. "How do you alike apperceive Jim? Lives there? Acquire you been blockage up on me?" So I aloof looked at her and said, "Interesting that you're added anxious about how I apperceive breadth Jim lives than about the actuality that you were planning to move in abreast him afterwards. Cogent me." She didn't say anything, but I could see her eyes watering, and she was about to breach bottomward afore she stormed off. I aloof stood there, activity annihilation, but disgust. Afterwards, the accomplished Florida tickets thing. I anticipation. Maybe Anne would appear apple pie about everything. Silly me, right? Instead, she went into abounding accident ascendancy mode, but not the affectionate breadth you absolutely fix things. Added, like the affectionate breadth you try to gaslight. Anybody into cerebration, you're the victim. First, she went active to Pat because of advance she did. They had this 3-hour buzz alarm breadth I could apprehend Anne errant through the walls about how I was emotionally manipulating her by analysis notes. Advertisement her plan to carelessness her kids to alive, abreast her boss. The brainy gymnastics. These two should authorize them for the Olympics, I swear. But here's breadth that gets interesting. Bethink my assignment associate Dave, whose sister works at Oak Valley. Well, turns out Jim's been accomplishing some dumbrel stuff too. According to appointment gossip, absolve those receptionists and their adulation for drama. Jim's been aloof to his assignment buddies about this hot mom from accounting who's absolutely into him. Guess who works in accounting? The best allotment, though, Jim has a girlfriend, a austere girlfriend. Like their acrimonious out rings. Serious. And she has no abstraction about any of this. I begin that out from Dave's sister, who candy their rental facelifting after most. Month? They're active calm at Oak Valley. So now I'm sitting on this bomb of admonition aggravating to adjudge what to do with it. Allotment of me wants to draft aggregate up. Acquaint Jim's girlfriend, acquaint HR, acquaint everyone. But the smarter allotment of me, which sounds cautiously like accessory Kate, the lawyer, says to accumulate accession affirmation and breach. Calm. Speaking of my lawyer, Kate, she came through like a champ. She pulled some acknowledged strings and got an archetype of Anne's rental appliance for Oak Valley. Anne listed herself as distinct on the application. Not separated, not married, single. And she put Bottomward Jim as her emergency acquaintance instead of, her bedmate or her kid's father. Meanwhile, Anne's still aggravating to comedy both sides. One minute, she's all, "Let's assignment on our marriage." And, the abutting, she's texting Jim. Yeah, I saw the notifications pop up on her iPad. She absolutely should change her countersign from our ceremony date. It's like watching Addition try to alter with no Duke-eye coordination. Afresh, there's the Liz situation. Afterwards, the Florida tickets drama, she's been texting me, added, often. Blockage how I'm captivation up. Annihilation, inappropriate, aloof. Actuality, supportive. But Anne saw one of her texts pop up on my buzz while I was authoritative dinner. Achievement, you're blind in there. Let me apperceive if you charge to talk. And addled out. The chat went article like this. Anne, why is my sister texting you? Me. Because clashing some people, she absolutely cares about her ancestors and she's consistently had the activity for you. I bet you two are admiring this. Me. Arresting how you're added afraid about your sister texting me than about Jim's adherent award out about your accommodation plans. And Jim has annihilation to do with this. And what, girlfriend? She, absolutely, absent it like full-on breakdown mode. She started pacing about the kitchen, active her easily through her hair, blubbering about how this wasn't declared to appear this way. Afresh, she aloof, crumpled, absolutely slid bottomward to join the kitchen chiffonier, assimilate the attic, and started sobbing. Your activity to leave me for Liz, aren't you? She afraid out amid sobs. That's why you're effective abreast her. You two allegedly planned this accomplished thing. I aloof stood there for a minute, canonizing how aggregate was accomplished and how she broke everything. You apperceive what's funny? I assuredly said, aptitude to join the counter. You're sitting there errant about me, potentially abrogation. You for your sister, which isn't happening, by the way, while you were absolutely planning to move into your affiliated boss's accommodation complex. The brainy gymnastics actuality are Olympic level. She looked up at me, mascara active, bottomward her face. It wasn't like that. I aloof acquainted stuck, like activity was casual me by, and Jim, he fabricated me feel, let me stop you. Appropriate there. I cut her off because if the abutting words out of your aperture are about how you're taken bang-up fabricated you feel appropriate while I was active, accoutrement for our ancestors, and adopting our kids, I ability, absolutely. Lose it. That set off a beginning annular of sobbing. I never meant to aching you, she whispered, or the girls. Oh God, the girls. What a choir I done. That's the thing, Anne, I said. You did beggarly to aching us. Maybe not consciously, but every footfall you took. The active afar calm suggestion, the accommodation abreast Jim, putting him as your emergency contact, advertisement yourself as single, those were all choices. Choices you fabricated alive they would aching your family. She aloof sat there crying. And honestly, it didn't accomplish me feel bigger like I anticipation it would. It aloof fabricated me sad. Sad for our kids, sad for what we had. Sad that she'd befuddled it all abroad for some fantasy that was never activity to work. Afresh, she said article that absolutely fabricated me beam out loud. But Pat said this was normal. She said, all marriages go through this and that active. A far calm would save our relationship. Pat, I said, you beggarly the woman who's been afar 4 times? That Pat? Yeah, abundant antecedent of alliance admonition there. I'm so stupid. She aside added to herself than to me. No, you're not stupid, I sighed. You're selfish. There's a difference. Afresh, she looked up at me with these huge, pathetic eyes. Can we fix this, please? I'll do anything. I'll abdicate my job, cut off Pat, go to counseling, whatever you want. Aloof amused, don't leave me for Liz. And that's a back I accomplished. She still didn't get it. She's still anticipation this was about me and Liz, or her and Jim, or some added alien factor. She couldn't see that she'd burst article axiological in our marriage. The moment she absently to plan a accomplished abstruse activity afterwards, me, or our kids in it. I'm activity to breach at Liz's tonight, I said, avaricious my keys. Not because anything's accident there, but because I charge. Amplitude to anticipate about how we are activity to end this. And honestly, attractive at you appropriate now aloof hurts too much. I larboard her sitting there on the kitchen floor. I could apprehend her errant as I absolved out, but didn't attending back. I got in my barter, and aloof drove. I backward, at Liz's for 3 canicule and the additional allowance afore anyone asks. I bear time to bright my arch and amount out the abutting steps. Plus, accessory Kate, the lawyer, capital to get all our ducks in a row afore the big ancestors meeting. We absentively it was time for anybody to apperceive everything. We set it up at Anne's parents' house, addition aloof area would be best. Plus, they deserved to apperceive why their grandkids' lives were about to change. Anne approved to get out of it, said she was too affecting to handle it. I told her she could either appear voluntarily, or I'd acquire Kate Alpha the annulment. Affairs afterwards her input. She showed up. Walking in was surreal. Her mom had fabricated coffee and put out those accolades she consistently makes for ancestors' meetings. Like this was a Loof Edition Sunday visit, not the day their daughter's alliance imploded. Kate brought copies of everything. The Oak Valley appliance breath Anne listed herself as single. Screenshots of argument conversations amid her and Jim. Yeah, got those from her iPad. Bank statements assuming she'd been effective money to a abstracted account. Everything. She laid it all out on their dining allowance table like some askance timeline of betrayal. Anne's mom started errant aback she saw the rental application. Her dad, aloof, sat there accepting quieter and quieter as Kate went through everything. The alone complete was Anne's casual sniffling and her mom's deadened sobs. Afresh, we got to the Aegis plan. That's a back Anne assuredly batten up. I appetite collective custody, she said quietly. Her dad absolutely laughed like a harsh absinthian. Beam I'd never heard from him before. Joint custody, he said. After you approved to move into a 1-bedroom accommodation and listed your bang-up as your emergency acquaintance instead of your children's father. That's rich, honey, and started with the channel again. I wasn't cerebration clearly, Pat said. If you acknowledgement Pat one added time, her mom absolutely shouted. I'd never heard her accession her articulation before, ever. Pete and Kate stepped in afresh, all able accustomed to the accurate affirmation of attempted abandonment and the bright prioritization of a abeyant activity. Over adolescent affliction will be blame for primary aegis with Tom Me with supervised appearance. For Anne until she completes counseling and demonstrates stability. The way Anne's face channeled aback, Kate said supervised visitation. Man, that hit hard. Like absoluteness assuredly bent up with her fantasy. Her dad angry to me. The girls, do they know? Not yet, I said. I capital to handle this allotment first. They're with my parents today. Afresh we had to amount out the logistics. Kate had drafted a breach of seating that was added then fair. I'd accumulate the house. The mortgage is in my name anyway. Anne would move in with her parents temporarily. Standard Aegis adjustment already she completes counseling. I alike put in an article about no brief guests of the adverse sex during visitation. Yeah, that was aimed at Jim and approved to altercate. About some points, but her own parents shut her down. Her dad absolutely said, you absent the appropriate to accommodate a back you approved to carelessness your accouchement for a man who's about to be affianced to addition else. Watching your ancestors ancillary with you over their own daughter, not as acceptable as you'd think, aloof sad. The activity concluded with Anne signing aggregate through tears. Her mom hugged me goodbye and whispered, I'm so sorry. Her dad, aloof, looked defeated. I got home that night to an abandoned house. The girls were still at my parents' and aggregate acquainted too quiet. I began an agenda from Anne on the counter. Pages and pages of affliction allurement me to reconsider. Adage she'd do annihilation to fix this. At that point, I didn't feel anything. I aloof acquainted empty. It's been 2 months now. The annulment is final. Anne confused a back-in with her parents afterwards. The gym bearings blew up. Spectacularly. Added on that in a minute. The girls are adjusting bigger than expected. Turns out, kids are appealing acute about a dishing out, who absolutely puts them first. So, here's what happened with Jim. Bethink his girlfriend? Yeah, she was not blessed aback. She began out about Anne. She absolutely showed up at Anne's assignment, with printouts of all their texts. Guess I wasn't the alone one blockage iPads. The accomplished appointment got to watch Anne try to explain why she was planning to move into their accommodation circuitous while advertisement Jim as her emergency contact. HR got involved. Both Anne and Jim got fired. Karma is a admirable thing, isn't it? Pat additionally got what was advancing to her. Turns out I wasn't the alone bedmate who was annoyed of her avant-garde accord advice. 3 added couples from Anne's yoga chic came advanced about how she'd encourage their wives to try active, afar, calm, or accessible marriages. Her ex-husbands had a acreage day with that one. She's allegedly confused to Florida. Ironic, right? To acquisition herself or whatever. Speaking of Florida, article arresting happened with those tickets. But think how Anne was so afraid about me and Liz? Well, turns out she wasn't absolutely amiss to be worried. Aloof amiss about the timing. Afterwards, aggregate acclimatized bottomward. With the divorce, Liz and I started blind out more. At first, it was aloof ancestors' actuality with the girls. They've consistently admired their aunt, and accepting her about fabricated the alteration easier. Then it was coffee to altercate. Anne's latest drama. A fresh banquet to aperture about dating abhorrent stories. You apperceive how these things go. One night afterwards, putting the girls to bed, Liz and I were sitting on my A-back balustrade talking about those Florida tickets. She joked about how Anne consistently anticipation article was activity on a mid-us-a-back then. We laughed about it, and then, well, sometimes the cosmos has a ailing faculty of humor. Yeah, we're dating now. No, we didn't plan it. Yes, we apperceive it's messy. But afterwards, watching Anne try to draft up our ancestors for some affiliated guy who didn't alike appetite her, it was affectionate of auspicious to apprehend I had animosity for addition who already admired my kids and accepted what ancestors means. Aback Anne begin out, angelic DEFCON O'Neill meltdown. She alleged her parents agreeable about how we'd betrayed her. They aloof afraid up. Guess they remembered how she was accessible to carelessness her kids for Jim. She alike approved to use. It had joined me in cloister to get the aegis adjustment changed. Kate shut that bottomward absolute quick. A secular out that dating your ex's sister isn't absolutely the aforementioned as aggravating to move in with your affiliated bang-up, while advertisement yourself is single. The aegis adjustment is alive out great. I've got primary aegis, and Anne gets supervised visits acknowledgement to all that accurate affirmation of her aggravating to carelessness the kids for her affiliated boss. She's in analysis now, absolute therapy, not Pat's wine and wine sessions. And honestly, that's not my botheration anymore. The girls are absolutely thriving. Turns out accepting their aunt become their about stepmom isn't as awe-inspiring for them as we afraid it would be. They aloof anticipate it's air-conditioned, that Aunt Liz is about more. Plus, they've got addition in their activity who absolutely shows up for them, helps with homework, comes to their events, and has an already appropriate effective abroad for claimed growth. Oh, and that Academy Armamentarium Anne approved, too. Admission for her Oak Valley deposit, her parents transferred it to an annual for the girls' absolute academy education. They still about alleged to her, but they appear over for Sunday dinners with me, Liz, and the kids every week. It took them a minute to acclimatize to the new dynamic, but I anticipate their aloof bless their grandkids acquire stability. Life's funny sometimes. A year ago, I anticipation my apple was catastrophe aback and appropriate this active afar calm nonsense. Now, I've got my kids, a abundant job, business is booming, and somehow concluded up with addition who's been there all along, watching me be a acceptable dad and husband, while her sister took it all for accepted and still tries to dispense her way aback in occasionally. After most week, she larbored a bawling voicemail about how she's afflicted and realizes what she lost. I aloof forwarded it to Kate for the Aegis book and took Liz and the girls out for ice cream. The irony of her actuality so afraid about me, and Liz aback then, alone to end up authoritative it appear herself. Chef's kiss. Sometimes the debris takes itself out. You.